fix it. It has been a while since we talked about Red Dwarf, and it recently returned for its 12th series this past fall. And for the most part, the series was a glorious combination of really funny, really smart new material, and really clever and well done callbacks to previous series. Spoiler warning here, if you haven't seen Series 12, don't go any further. I mean, we had Lifter shredding it on guitar alongside Adolf Hitler. We had the entire cast in Crichton makeup, and the returns of both Talkie Toaster and Norman Lovett's Holly. And that's not even going into the fact that the episodes that those happened in were really creative and really interesting concepts that the writers and actors did wonders with. However, there's one episode that's the odd one out. The one skunky can of leopard lager in the six-pack. Timewave. So you might be wondering why I randomly picked this specific episode to review, and the answer to that is, we haven't talked about Red Dwarf in a pretty long time, at least outside of my podcast vlog things that I do when the new episodes release, and I've just got my Rimmer costume hanging up in my laundry room gathering dust because I haven't justified wearing it since I wore it to New York Comic Con 2 years ago, and I figured I had an open review slot that I couldn't think of anything good for, and I want to alternate weeks between movies and TV properties. So I got to thinking about bad Red Dwarf episodes, and because this was the most recent series that I had watched, Timewave is the one that stuck out to me. You'll soon see why. But before we start, I just want to make it clear. I absolutely loved Series 12 outside of this episode, and this episode's quality in no way changes that opinion. It's just the weakest of the 6, I think. So let's cut this prologue off here and get right into the episode. This is Timewave. Now, the episode revolves around the boys from the dwarf getting into trouble on a ship whose occupants have banned any and all criticism. The irony of me reviewing this episode is not lost on me, but let's get into it anyway. The episode starts with the crew out on a mission on a moon rich in a very rare and very volatile helium isotope, helium-7, and Rimmer, being the acting senior officer, very humbly names the moon after himself. However, they can't take any of the helium-7 with them because they've got to haul ass out of there due to a solar storm coming their way, or so they think. They later discover that the solar storm was actually a time wave.
He said it! He said it!
Like a regular wave can wash up items on shore from the ocean, a time wave, caused by an imploding black hole, sweeps items and people up in the time stream and washes them up in either the future or the past. If that sounds like an interesting concept, it is, but don't get too attacked, because the episode is then set up on its actual plot, which is the dwarfers having to board the SS Inconium, a ship that washes up in the time wave on a collision course with planet Rimmer, which means that if it crashes into that much helium isotope, the entire sector will be wiped out in the resulting explosion. However, there's a catch. The SS Inconium has banned any and all criticism on board their ship, which means that they've got to be careful not to accidentally break their anti-criticism laws. They board and see that the crew of the Inconium are encouraged to express themselves in whatever way they desire. For British Nick Swardson over here, it takes the form of whatever the hell that outfit is. And people get on my case for pairing a Stetson with a sweater vest, bow tie, and suit jacket. Least it's not this. Anyway, they inform BNS that the ship is heading for a moon, and he tells them that the engineers are busy, because without criticism, everyone on the ship is doing what they want to do, not what they're good at, and so no one is around to reroute the engines. British Nick Swardson tells them to go to the diner on board while he finds the captain, and when they do, they get bad food spilled on them by a clumsy waitress, and when they criticize her, she calls the Crit Cops, and they opt for Red Dwarf Plan Alpha, legging it and rush away, only to be caught by the Crit Cops, who lock them up when the cat insults the cop's wife. For some reason. It's sort of uncharacteristically rude for the cat to do. He's vain and a dick to Lifter and Rimmer all the time, but he's not usually that mean-spirited. While in the slammer, they meet up with one of the ship's worst offenders, someone who tutted in a line. They use some of the helium-7 to escape, but are caught by the cops again, and while the cops are initially going to help them escape, since they show him the joys of criticism, they're then caught by British Nick Swardson, who brings them to be drained of their inner critic. They get hooked up, but when Rimmer is about to be drained, his self-loathing is too much for the machine to handle, and it releases his inner critic onto the ship. Nothing we haven't seen before, as Rimmer defeats his inner critic by criticizing it for not protecting him from failure, as it had claimed that it was doing by telling him he was bad so he wouldn't take any risks. After seeing the defeat, British Nick Swardson decides that the criticism ban is lifted, and the ship is diverted from its course. As a show of thanks, BNF decides to give them a token of gratitude. Instead of upgrading Crichton or Red Dwarf's engines, as he initially wanted to, he instead decides to give them a piece of his artwork, which Lister good-naturedly tells him isn't all that good. To which BNF responds by reinstating the criticism ban and chasing them off the ship. On the surface, the Timewave idea is very interesting. Red Dwarf and time travel are a staple plot of the show, so much so that we've gotten a time travel episode nearly every season in some way, shape, or form. And the premise of things washing up in the future, or them washing up in the past, has potential, and it's a very Red Dwarf-esque idea. So it's a shame that it was wasted. And up to when they go onto the Inconium, the episode is really strong. It's got a good opening with Rimmer claiming the moon, humbly in his own name, the stuff where Rimmer asks to be put into dangerous situations and the cat wholeheartedly begs him to do so. It's reminiscent of classic Red Dwarf, like this scene.
All in all, 100% successful trip.
Sir, we lost Mr. Rimmer.
All in all, 100% successful trip.
The banter between the quartet was very strong too, and the type of banter that Red Dwarf is known for. And even when they're on the Inconium, we get a few good callbacks to past episodes. When they see a guitar player on the Inconium playing badly, Kat remarks that Lister's song from Time Slides could go platinum on the Inconium. And when planning their escape, Crichton asks Lister for one of his boots, leading to a callback to how a running gag used in the episode that introduced Crichton was how Lister's moon boots smelled horrible. Other than a few good gags and a decent initial concept, though, I couldn't find a lot of good in this one. The Timewave doesn't actually do anything. Usually when the title of the episode is a reference to something that happens in the episode or a character that appears, it's a major plot point. Polymorph, Future Echoes, Samsara, Pete, Lemons, Cassandra. I could go on, and in every one of just those 6 episodes I mentioned, the titular item/person has a major focus. In this one, it gets them to the Inconium, and then they never bring it up again. Compounding that, criticism banning is a weak concept. Maybe as a one-off joke, but to structure an entire episode around it, it's just one joke repeated ad nauseum over and over and over and over. Obviously, this is supposed to be saying that criticism is good and society needs it to function. And I mean, I sort of have to agree. I'd be out of a job without criticism. But the episode doesn't really do a lot with the idea, just giving us the bare minimum, and it doesn't feel like it's particularly adventurous. It does what it sets out to do, but just barely. Now on to the specifics. Listen, they're idiots, and I know that. But they're not so stupid, especially by Series 12, that they're going to immediately break all the laws of the ship that they're on. That part in the diner made no sense for Lister, of all people, to immediately criticize the food right after Rimmer criticized the coffee burning his lap, which was a justified one. The breaking of the law should be accidental, based on force of habit. Like how they say, we haven't ordered yet. That one works. The food looks gross line doesn't. Except for the cat. Him doing that despite being told makes perfect sense. But the bit with the cops and that remark about the officer's wife was uncharacteristically harsh for the cat. Maybe a joke about his lack of style, but not that. They also break out in a stupid way. When they've broken out before, they've done it covertly, stealthily. Even in Series 8, it showed them sneaking out of their incarceration, and it took stealth. Here, they just blow the doors off and run, so no duh they got caught. Also, the Planet Rimmer stuff, which is one of the only good things in the episode, only factors into helping them escape and being the thing making them race against time to stop the crash. But it never feels like a race against time. Honestly, if they hadn't kept mentioning it, I'd have forgotten that it was a race against time, because the episode doesn't feel like it has stakes, considering how much they meander between going to the diner, getting arrested, being put in the cell, escaping the draining, etc. By the end, I was almost wishing for them to crash into Planet Rimmer and blow up the whole sector. I also found British Nick Swardson, whose real name is Ziggy Bryceman. I'm still gonna call him British Nick Swardson, though, super annoying. I don't know what it was, but just his entire personality put me off. And the outfits that the people on the Inconium wear are garish, and I think the British term would be camp. So because people are free from criticism, they dress ridiculously? I mean, if I was free from criticism, the only difference in the way I dress would be that I'd stop caring about what colors look good together, not go out in a tutu and a pink military outfit. And how many times are we going to be saved by Rimmer's self-loathing somehow coming in handy? I think they've beat that dead horse to death, brought it back to life as an insubstantial hologram, and then beat it to death again. That whole inner critic thing was just another way to force that deus ex machina that we've seen 1,000,000 times before on this show in. Adding to that, the wrap-up is too easy and generally unsatisfying. They just repeal the criticism ban quickly to even more quickly repeal the repeal for a closing of the episode on Red Dwarf Plan Alpha. We don't even get to see them save the ship, just the result. At least let us see a scene of the hairdressers trying to reroute the engines or something. Run with the Timewave. I know we just did a historical figure episode 2 episodes ago with Cured, but what if this one revisited their own history? I know that Skipper has us see classic Red Dwarf at the end of the season, but what if Red Dwarf got stuck in the Timewave and got washed up through its own history? Maybe we get some run-ins with past adversaries, the fan favorites like the Inquisitor or Hudson. Get Graham McTavish or Mark Williams back for a cameo. Red Dwarf is a big ship. What if the ship got divided into different time periods, like in that Voyager episode Shattered, except done better? Sort of an Angels and Demons sort of thing, where they have to reunite the disparate parts. Like maybe the cat goes back to some earlier point of cat civilization, and maybe in a twist of fate somehow inspires his own fashion. And Rimmer goes back and maybe getting the chance to retake the officer's exam, and he still, 30 years later, writes, "I am a fish," does a funny little dance and faints. What if Lister ended up on Red Dwarf before it left port, and had the opportunity to finally make it back to Earth, only to give it up because he has to go save his friends, showing what character development that he's gotten in the past 30 years. What I'm saying is that there were several ways to take the concept of Timewave and make it worse, instead of resorting to sidelining that plot and moving on to another, much less interesting one. But let's posit that that's off the table. Let's say that I can only fix what currently exists. Instead of having them run afoul of the anti-criticism police, have the Dwarfers spend the episode trying to teach the crew of the SS Inconium to be critical. Some Eliza Doolittle type stuff where the Inconium's crew can't manage to do it. Have Crichton, spill hot soup on them and then they act all apologetic. Having it be a rigid anti-criticism regime might make for that fun joke about the tutting guy, but other than that, it was one note, and that one note wasn't very funny. At least the teaching would carry a few scenes, and lose the inner critic draining, it added nothing to the episode except yet another walk down Rimmer's self-loathing lane. This pretty much fixes the major issues, and for some housekeeping stuff, I'd make the outfits maybe clash a lot instead of looking like this, which would give the cat some good material, perhaps teaching them fashion, how to express themselves without looking like complete asshats. Then they can show that maybe the ship is a lost cause and the Dwarfers have to run to the engine room and reroute the ship themselves, all the while criticizing each other, which shows the Inconium's crew the error of their ways. And if they want to end the episode on a joke, at least if the ending was climactic like that, saving the ship, the joke where they had Ziggy having a thin skin and repealing the repeal would actually have been funny. And that was Timewave. Not a great outing, but definitely not the absolute worst Red Dwarf episode out there. I'd probably give that to Duck Soup or Beyond a Joke, if I'm being honest. And it had a really funny concept behind it that they just squandered. You can't introduce a time wave in the first act if it's not going to factor in some way to the resolution. The ideas are there, the execution was just lackluster. And it's not like I don't get what they were going for, I just think that the episode could have been so much more than what it was. And based on what I came up with, it really wasn't that hard to figure out how to do that, making the final episode's quality even more baffling. Anyway, that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more of how to fix it, you can hit that subscribe button, and if you have any comments or complaints about the video, you can put those in the comments section below. Oh, and if you want to be notified of new uploads, you can hit that bell icon. And if you enjoyed this video, show it to your friends and share it around the internet, and maybe consider supporting the show on Patreon. See you next time for a review of another really cool concept that was completely squandered. Ready Player One. To which BNS responds by reinstating the criticism ban and chasing them off the ship. Criticism ban.